Well, yeah, the whole movie's a mess, and we'll just get right into the production problems with this. Is the reason it is such a mess is that there were so many different parties behind the scenes with so many different concepts of what they wanted to happen, and a hierarchy of power that made some people be able to supersede the other people in their ideas. Thus, everything is just kind of a jumbled mess. This is this person's thing, this is that person's thing. And movie making is a collaborative process, and a lot of people put their hands on everything, and that's how it makes it work. So it's not really a problem that there's so many people having input, it's the fact that they're all completely conflicting on what they want this movie to be.
Yeah,
Right.
And generally there's only one or two people steering the ship. But,
Yes.
Everybody contributes and puts things on the movie, but usually, one or two people kind of generally take the other people's input and put it in a direction. Well, this seems like everybody had their hands on the wheel and were just spinning it in random directions.
Wait! Two people can't drive at the same time?
You're right. We should all drive.
It's ideal for there to be a singular vision and everyone else just kind of contributes and is more or less on the same page, and they all have this common goal of reaching that singular vision. So clearly that's not what happened here.
Yeah, well, in many behind the scenes things on good things, you'll have like all the actors will be like, I'm here to present the director's vision, and the producers are like, we put all the people in place to try to get the director's vision, and if you subscribe to auteur theory, that all kind of makes sense, it all gels. I mean, there's conflicting ideas as to how movies are made, but generally you want someone that can tell people yes or no, is this right for this project?
Right. Or else it's just a jumbled mishmash of different ideas.
Yes. I'll try to bring the story of Hellboy together chronologically from what I could piece together from IMDb trivia facts and some odds and ends articles. So I could never really find anything concrete that led to like historical record of many things happening. So I don't know how accurate this is. And I want to say that a lot of this is allegations from other people being slung at other people. So don't get litigious with me, Lionsgate. Please. So it starts in 2013, 2014. A child in Make-A-Wish submits their wish to the organization that he wants to spend the day with his favorite superhero, which is Hellboy, specifically the portrayal of Ron Perlman in Guillermo del Toro's movies. So all the people that worked on the makeup and stuff very heroically came together, put Ron Perlman into the chair for 4 hours, did all of his makeup, and he spent the day with this Make-A-Wish child. And this is very touching. Mm-hmm. And as a result, it touched Guillermo del Toro, and he said, oh, let's make a third Hellboy. This is the time. I have some drive to do it now. Ron Perlman wants to do it. Let's make this movie.
Oh, and I want to note that in terms of popularity, Ron Perlman's at his peak because Sons of Anarchy is like the second biggest show on cable. And, like, there's actually like stuff pointing towards like, I don't know, everyone's kind of been doing semi-hot stuff, so it's like, okay, maybe we can bring this back, even though the first two movies didn't do very well in the box office. They were both saved by really, really strong DVD rentals and purchases and stuff.
Yeah, home video.
Yeah.
I didn't even know about this Make-A-Wish story. It's crazy to think
nice.
that this Shakespearean tale of tragedy has such a humble and cute beginning.
It's so charming and nice, and it just makes you remember how nice of a guy Guillermo del Toro is.
Dude, who would have thought that a Hollywood disaster story would start with Guillermo del Toro as a nice guy?
GDT and Ron Perlman are really cool dudes from what I can glean from sources all over the place. And so then Guillermo del Toro starts hyping it up on social media. He's trying to, prove to Lionsgate, who has the movie rights to the comic books, that there is demand for this, and he seems to successfully do that. So then he starts getting in talks with Mike Mignola to, put together this Hellboy 3 and try to get it made. And at some point, I don't know if this is before or after, he went to Mike and said, maybe we could do this in a comic book form. But the way Mike responds to that question is informed by the rest of this story. So he goes to Mike and we got to make this. Guillermo lays out his plans for the movie and what he wants to do with the characters, all that kind of stuff. But something about it turns Mike Mignola off, and he's like, no, this is not going to happen. And that might not be the primary reason for it, but it's one of the reasons that leads to the project moving away from Guillermo del Toro, and Lionsgate takes him off of the project, or he leaves. This is all, questionable, but he's no longer on the project, because of creative differences with Mike Mignola. And because of that, Ron Perlman leaves because he very strongly believes that Del Toro is the man to do it.
I can understand that. Del Toro and Perlman have been working together since day one, and Del Toro did do a very good job adapting the comic book. His movies are a little bit more gentle and romantic than the comic book, but
that's his whole shtick, is he likes fantasy and romanticism. So his approach was very distinct in his, but it lent itself very well to the screen. So whether or not it represents Mike Mignola's comics and vision on the comics are not movies.
No, and it's not that it's wildly disparate. It's just tonally a little bit more Guillermo's. But I very much wonder what was the sticking point between them. But I guess with all this behind the scenes chaos, we'll never really find out.
We'll never know.
My bet, I feel like a lot of creative differences with that are this character dies, or this character does this thing, and it's always very specifically that character wouldn't do that wouldn't happen to that character. I mean, it happens. Creative differences.
Hellboy would never drink Pabst. You can't do this.
He would never drink Pabst. He's a Pib man, never Dr. Pepper. How fucking dare you?
And he eats his popcorn only without butter.
Oh, that's fucked up.
Yeah.
The GDT would be right to change that if that was the case.
Well, Mignola thought it was the devil half of him, but
Okay, that's fair. So this leads to the project just kind of being up in the air. So then they have to, put all the pieces together, find a new director, make a new identity for the whole entire project, and start anew. But the whole entire aim of it was to put Mike Mignola at the center and let him drive it, to give it the separation from the Del Toro movies, which they were, from the bonus features you'll see, they are very intent on being different from Del Toro's thing.
This one feels very different than the other films.
It was very different to the previous movies which I had seen. I felt they were trying to achieve something new and a bit different.
In order to relaunch the franchise and create something new and something that hadn't really been represented the same way on screen before.
It's a different version of Hellboy than we've seen in theaters so far.
We get to tell his origin in a way that's never been told in any of the earlier movies.
Whether or not that means making it good. So then comes the probably what destroys this movie, and I'm not sure if this is after they start production or in the timeline. It's kind of messy, but they get Neil Marshall to attach to direct, and he has his crew members. David Harbour's attached as Hellboy, and everything else is filled out. At some point in this process, Deadpool comes out and becomes the most successful rated R movie of all time.
Then he got an idea. An awful idea.
Lionsgate
got a wonderful, awful idea.
What if Hellboy was Deadpool?
Exactly. It's Hellboy somewhere between pre-production and production, and maybe somewhere in post, suddenly the vision changes, and now it's time to become this kind of Marvel-esque Deadpool kind of deal.
See, I didn't know that the whole Deadpool connection. I didn't think about that. But what I was thinking about a lot is just Marvel. Like,
yes.
Okay, we need to make Hellboy make all these quips and funny jokes because that's what they do in the Marvel movies. And that's kind of how I read it. But it's definitely both. I mean,
yeah.
I desperately wish this came out after Joker.
Oh my God.
That would be so funny.
Jesus Christ.
We will live in a demon society.
So that changes the whole scope of the project, and yeah, it's playing off of the Marvel quippiness, and of course that's what popularized it. But Deadpool is like, there's a market in making this edgy, and that's not necessarily, I mean, I'm not an expert on Hellboy as a character or anything, but that's not necessarily what the comics are. Am I too far off, Aaron?
No, he's definitely not an edgy Deadpool type. Like, of course there's edge to the internal conflict demon man thing.
Yeah.
But it's not that kind of like a teenager child edge that Deadpool like pulls from. And that's not even like I don't actually mean that negatively towards Deadpool. It's just that's not what Hellboy is.
He's a funny character and he makes quips, but they're not the type of kind of like dead. I don't know how to portray and say
he does quips, but maybe it's not like every line. You know,
yeah. He's more generally reserved.
It's like,
yeah,
no exaggeration. It's pretty much every other line.
It's Militant.
He quips, but it's like in the moment, and it plays more to his character. But the quips in this movie are not a product of Hellboy as his own being, but as this is what other movies are written like.
And a lot of the humor with him is that he's just very like blunt and to the point, and not that he's like a trickster joker.
Or yeah, he's not like sassy or like, sarcastic.
There's humor that comes from him, but he's not doing like an open mic bit.
Yes.
This change all happens during production. Various different changes happen. To that end, apparently there were rewrites happening just constantly throughout the shoot that it just made it confusing. People just didn't know what was happening a lot of the time. And allegedly, the changes were being made by David Harbour and Ian McShane. And that was portrayed by some party as a bad thing because it's like, there's who's running this fucking thing is just everyone's doing everything. But then the producers fired back and said, this did not happen, but if it did, it would be okay. Which lets you know that it's
almost certainly
probably did.
We took some time and we developed the script and we developed the story a little further. And
he's bringing so much, not only to the character, but to the script. He loves to ad-lib. He's a writer himself. He's a big presence. You know immediately when David's on set.
But yeah, it's not inherently a bad thing for rewrites, but like, who's running the asylum? The inmates cannot be running the asylum. And while those changes were also happening, the producers were not letting Neil Marshall do anything that he wanted, it seemed. Straight off of the bat, so the Blood Queen, Nimue, she has a tree that she derives her power from or something. I don't care. But the director had a very strong idea of what the tree was going to look like. And it breaks down in what I've read that he wanted it to be asymmetrical, but the producers wanted it to be symmetrical. And they immediately just told him, no, it can't be asymmetrical.
That's such a minute detail. So that, I guess that gives you an insight to like how much they wanted to control if they weren't even letting him do that.
Yeah, but if you see the actual movie as it's come out, the tree, after all it's said and done, it's asymmetrical. So in post, They made it asymmetrical anyway, so the whole fight was null.
Yeah, to be honest, I couldn't remember what it looked like, but yeah, that's wild.
You can feel some of the disruptions in this production from the couple deleted scenes there are, because...
Yeah, well, we'll get to that.
It's fascinating.
It's fascinating, the changes that you can see just between the final product and the deleted scenes that they went out of their way to include on home media, which they didn't have to do.
No.
They didn't have to give you that insight into all that kind of shit, but they did.
It's true. Yeah. Just as a little precursor, you rarely see deleted scenes that actually are just good and probably should have been in the movie. And I'm not going to say that's all of them, but we'll get to it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, they just usually, or you immediately sit there and go, oh, that had no purpose in the story. Okay.
Uh-huh. Or there's like a string of stuff that sets up something that never pays off.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, normally you get it instantaneously.
These bonus features are like, oh, I can see director versus producer versus actor. But, so, like, very early on into the production, maybe related to the sorts of, quabbles that they were having with the shit involving the tree, producers Lloyd Levin and Lawrence Gordon are the party that is clashing with Neil Marshall most of the time, according to these articles. They fired Neil Marshall's cinematographer to send a message that he was not in control. That's what Neil Marshall says. Of course, the producers' lawyers say otherwise, but that is the environment on the set.
That's crazy. How far into production did they fire a cinematographer?
The way it's phrased in all these things, it's very early. I think it was like the first few days.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the other guy isn't credited, so I assumed that it was pretty early.
Yeah, okay. I mean, that's still, if true, that's still crazy, but I guess the timing of that could have been worse.
It kind of reads to me, between the deleted scenes and stuff, that it seems like maybe, from what I can parse, and this is completely an outsider's perspective, but it seems like they had him when they were doing exteriors, specifically in the scene with the giants, because those scenes look very different from everything else.
Yeah.
So that's my bet, is he was able to get in and do some of like a specific scene, and then pretty much he was gone.
Damn. Could you imagine?
No, I can't imagine being like committed to a project where you had to work with the director, get everything in line, you know what you're gonna light, how you're gonna light it, these are the shots, and then
you shoot one scene, and then you're packing your bags and you're going home.
That's so incredibly fucked.
Yeah.
That sucks so hard. I'm pretty sure that's like the cinematographer that Neil Marshall worked with on his other films, which is very important to Neil Marshall's aesthetic because he has a very strong visual style that's there's a lot of stark contrast. It's got this chiaroscuro kind of element to it, this noir kind of strong highlights, deep low lights.
Yeah, and that's perfect for Hellboy. Like, if you've ever looked at Hellboy art, Mike Mignola draws it like on black paper. He makes the darkness like the emphasis point of like a lot of, like, of most shots, and it's very atmospheric, and and so like that cinematographer Neil Marshall were like a logically really good pick for this. And then when you look at the movie, there's none of that aesthetic in it, pretty much.
He wanted to take the colors of the original Hellboy and push them to more extreme places.
The use of negative space in Hellboy, it can't be understated. There's so many deep blacks, just like no gradation or anything, just black and light, and that's such a strong element of the visual style of Hellboy. And theoretically, this movie trying to be more true to Mike Mignola's creative vision, that is a perfect way to handle it. When that's the whole gimmick, is this is Mike Mignola's Hellboy the way you have not seen it before.
I feel like we've kind of stuck quite closely to what is in the comics.
We're doing, in some ways, something that's much more close to my material.
We really wanted to reconnect with the source material.
It created an opportunity to do a Hellboy movie that was more faithful to what Mike Mignola had created.
We're creating a new variation on the Mignola Hellboy.
There's a couple scenes in which there are spots that are just completely black, and the color clipping and artifacting on the DVD transfer was like shocking. I don't know. Oh, I guess, yeah, you watched the Blu-ray, so you probably didn't.
I have the full scope because, well, between you and me, I have the full scope because I watched the 4K, and to refresh myself today, I just threw the Blu-ray on in the background. I really didn't gain much from it. Not to get too into it because we cover the video at the end. It does look better not on DVD, but like...
Yeah, I would have to assume.
People weren't thinking about perhaps the versatility of the visuals at points in the production of this. But the last detail I have to mention on the production element before we get into the plot is that allegedly David Harbour would be so frustrated with the production that he would storm off, and he and Neil Marshall butted heads a lot. It seems that Neil Marshall did not want David Harbour to play the character, period. So then that led to a lot of tension between the two of them.
Nah, man, he was just deep into his character. He was character acting. He was he was pissy and he had a short temper. That's why he stormed off, because he was trying to be Hellboy.
Because I have to play an angry, demon who's conflicted and all that stuff. There are some days where I just get socially very awkward and very strange and, wind up kind of sometimes even like getting angry and stuff like that. And
I don't even know if that's what Hellboy's character is usually. I don't know a lot about Hellboy.
I mean, he makes jokes. Like, I don't want to try to make it sound like he's not a character who does comedy. It's just he's not just a pure... every second quip machine.
But yeah, I mean, he is pissy. His whole thing is, he doesn't love being part demon, so...
Yeah, and he's conflicted with, which side to trust, the other demons or the humans, because he was raised with both.
Yeah, he's torn between two very different worlds.
Yeah. And he shaves his horns for a sense of normality, even though that doesn't make him look any more normal.
It's a good character, and Mike Mignola has a lot of interesting ideas. They don't play out well